starting to begin be a little bit more conscious of elections that are taking place in what now? 5 months, 7 months. But this story I found completely heartwarming, and I'm sure you'll understand after I read it. It is from the Washington Monthly, written by Rachel Cohn. It's the story of Alex Tabarrok. He is an economist at George Mason University. George Mason University, ladies and gentlemen. I want you to think about the economists that are there. Yes, he is a libertarian. George Mason is a hotbed of libertarianism, and as such, they're awash in Koch brothers' money. In fact, I think it's out of George Mason University where there is a program which then turns around and subsidizes some of Dave Rubin's videos, if I'm not corrected. Something like the Liberty Project or something. Now, of course, this guy, Alex Tabarrok, has written very favorably of private prisons, private airports, even private cities. When Tabarrok and his former grad student, Nathan Goldschlag, set out to measure how federal regulations impact businesses' growth, well, you can imagine what they thought they were going to find. I mean, how many times... Now, look, for me, the value in government regulation is not that it's going to help businesses grow. And to me, it's not even... I don't even rarely bring up the notion that, like, well, it doesn't hurt businesses that much. Because I don't care. The point of government regulation, and I don't believe in all government regulations. I think you can have stupid regulations or ones that were well-intentioned and turned out to be bad, and so you should change those. But the primary reason why you have government regulation is because the business of business is to do business and to maximize their profits. And so you need to inhibit their ability to externalize their costs onto us in the form of lack of safety, lack of health, destruction of the commons. So he does this study, these two, Tabarrok and Nathan Goldschlag, because apparently the Center for Study of Public Choice.
Yes. That is the quintessential serious libertarian title right there. That's
at George Mason University's Mercatus Center. Mercatus, of course, Latin for market. It is heavily funded by Charles Koch and Richard Fink, a former Koch Industries executive. So it's not just all Koch money. It's money that someone earned while working for the Koch brothers.
It's also former Koch money.
Right. So Tabarrok is the director for the Center of Public Choice and an economics chair at the Mercatus Center. And in 2014, two other Mercatus Center research fellows developed a new type of database, really not even a new type of database, but a database called Reg Data. Way to look into the implications of regulations. It captures everything published in the Code of Federal Regulations each year. And it also uses AI to predict which industry each regulation will impact, because there's downstream implications of any regulation in any given industry. And so economists supposedly could measure federal regulations over time and by industry and assess its implications on business. So for the first paper using the database, Tabarrok looked at the effect of federal regulation on, quote, economic dynamism, which is a term which refers to the rate at which new businesses launch and grow when people switch jobs, lose jobs, or move for work. And apparently there has been a notable and some say mysterious decline in dynamism over the last few decades. I wonder what happened over the last few decades. Well, we've talked about this on this program, but let's table that for a moment. The rate at which startups form is half of what it was 40 years ago. Some people say millennials, but we will get to that. The fraction of workers who bounce from one job to another has plunged. That's a sign of competitive labor markets. It's plunged. Productivity has slowed. And adult unemployment remains well below its early 2000 peak. And it turns out that, according to Tabarrok, I was pretty surprised that we just kept coming up with nothing. I'm a free market type of person, so it wouldn't have surprised me to find that government regulation is causing decline in dynamism. It fits my priors of the way I would see the world. So yes, I was expecting to find something. However, it turns out they found nothing in regards to federal regulations. There was not only no causation, there wasn't even a correlation to federal regulation and its loss of dynamism. The premise that regulations come at the expense of economic activity is so pervasive, writes Rachel Cohen, that even the American left tends to accept it. But there has never been strong evidence that these trade-offs actually exist. Tabarrok said he's open to the theory that consolidation has hurt dynamism, but deeply skeptical that antitrust enforcement can fix it. So, in other words...
They still found the answer they were looking for.
They couldn't figure out. It appears as if government regulation does not in any way inhibit economic dynamism. And now, I imagine in some instances it curtails profits, but in other instances, I imagine it increases profits for different people. With new regulation, tends to be new industries that are created. Sometimes they find new products. Apparently, these electric cars are getting very exciting. Cafe standards are very helpful for people. Even these light bulbs, can you imagine?
Whoa.
Where would we be today without LEDs?
Right,
well, that was all because of those horrible government regulations about the light bulb, those onerous regulations. No, and there's no data out, or at least that Tabarrok will accept. But there's a good reason to believe that the reason why you've seen less businesses grow is because you have behemoths in all of these industries. And that antitrust is the issue. And of course, he's a little bit skeptical that antitrust laws could stop that, but maybe he should do more research. But I just found that a heartwarming story because the idea of a libertarian looking at data and accepting data as opposed to just sort of a theory is something that we have never encountered at this program, even with academics.
Oh, no. Even, I would say even potentially more so with some academics. Can I just add a little 30-second democratic blaming for this as well in terms of the story and the culture? I was doing some reading for a project or a show that we're going to do on TMBS, and Al Gore's Reinventing Government. He went on, I think it was like Letterman, to show him shredding government regulations. And this idea was that he was in charge of like this giant onerous project to, get rid of and also fire a lot of members of the federal workforce.
Oh, in 92. Yes.
92.
I mean, this was all part of Bill Clinton's...
The third way DLC stuff.
Yeah, this is all part of Bill Clinton's the era of big government is over. I mean, that's a quote of his. And that he was all in on that. And Gore was, among other things, appointed to that task force. They had a special name for it. I can't remember. But he also...
Reinventing Government.
Yeah. There was also another one he was also doing was basically creating the internet. But
right.
But yes, that was a 30 some odd years ago. And the Democratic Party, I think, has hopefully begun to shift. I mean, I mentioned the other day that the Schatz, I'm not even remembering what context this came up, but Brian Schatz no longer feels like he has to justify the spending in his proposal. I think this came up with Tom Hartman. Schatz introduced a debt-free college proposal, and I'm more in favor of a free college, but nevertheless, he did not feel compelled to provide for a pay for. I mean, I think it's all part of the same attitude that Democrats are beginning to sort of come around there. But yes, Al Gore was definitely, and it was a Bill Clinton thing. They were the new Democrats.
We're new Democrats. Onerous regulations like not being able to execute a retarded black guy.
Exactly. You don't want those.
By the way, that's also, not a joke. Look it up. Pretty terrifying story.
He left the campaign in 92, I guess it was, to go back and oversee that capital punishment.
And remember what that guy said?
He said he thought he was going to get some
He asked
soup
if
or
he
something.
could save his
Yeah,
meal
save
for
his
later.
save his dessert for later.
He
Yeah.
didn't understand at all what was happening
No.
to him. Sick.
No, it was horrible.